Imagine you're alone in your home late at night, the clock ticking past midnight. The wind howls outside, rattling the windows, when suddenly you hear it a faint, deliberate scratch at your door. Your pulse quickens. You creep closer, heart pounding, and find a single, crumpled note slipped under the door. In shaky handwriting, it reads, they know. Run. No signature, no explanation, just those chilling words. You glance out the window, but the street is empty, swallowed by darkness. Who left the note? Who's they? And why do you feel like you're being watched? This is the kind of mystery that pulls Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson into action, where every shadow hides a clue and every clue leads to danger. Welcome to Sherlock Holmes and the Resident Patient's Final Warning, a tale that'll keep you guessing until the very end. So, grab a snack, dim the lights, and let's unravel this puzzle together with Chapter 1. Hit that like button and subscribe to join the adventure. It's a dreary, rain-soaked evening in 1887, and Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, are tucked away in our cozy rooms at 1B Baker Street. The fire's glowing, casting flickering shadows on the walls, and Holmes is sprawled in his armchair, puffing on his pipe. I'm jotting down notes from our last case, enjoying the rare quiet moment. But with Holmes, quiet moments are like calm. Before a storm, there's a sharp rap at the door, and Mrs. Hudson brings in a man who looks like he's carrying the weight of the world. His name's Dr. Percy Trevelyan, a thin, jittery doctor with round glasses and a voice that shakes us. He speaks. He's not here for a friendly chat, he's got a problem, and it's weird enough to bring him straight to Sherlock Holmes. Trevelyan spills his story, and I can see Holmes' eyes sharpen like a cat spotting a mouse. He's a young doctor, good at his job but strapped for cash, specializing in nervous disorders. A few years back, he was barely scraping by when a man named Mr. Blessington made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Blessington, a wealthy but peculiar fellow, proposed to bankroll Trevelyan's medical practice. He'd pay for a swanky office on Brook Street, cover all expenses, and even let Trevelyan live upstairs. The catch: Blessington would live there, too, as a resident patient, and take 3/4 of the practice's profits. For a struggling doctor, it was a lifeline, and Trevelyan said yes. Things went fine at first. Trevelyan treated patients, built his name, and Blessington stayed out of the way, holed up in his rooms. But lately, Blessington's been acting like a man on edge, locking his doors, jumping at shadows, and muttering about danger. Then, last week, 2 strange men showed up at the practice, posing as patients. Their questions weren't about medicine, they were about Blessington. Now, Trevelyan's worried, and Blessington's downright terrified. Holmes leans in, his mind already slicing through the details. He peppers Trevelyan with questions. What did the men look like? What did they say exactly? Trevelyan describes them to foreigners, one older with a limp, the other younger, both with thick accents. They asked odd things about Blessington's health, not their own, and left in a hurry. Holmes jots down notes, his face calm but his eyes alive with curiosity. I know that, look, something's brewing, and it's not good. Holmes agrees to take the case and says we'll visit Trevelyan's practice tomorrow. As Trevelyan leaves, practically tripping over his own feet with gratitude, Holmes turns to me with a grin. Watson, he says, this Blessington's got a secret, and it's a dark one. Let's find out what it is. I nod, feeling that familiar spark of excitement. The game's afoot, and we're on the hunt. What's Blessington so afraid of? Who are these mysterious men sniffing around? And what's the deal with that creepy resident patient? We'll dive deeper in Chapter 2, where Holmes and I step into the heart of the mystery on Brook Street. Stick around and drop a comment below. What do you think Blessington's hiding? Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe for more Sherlock Holmes adventures. The next morning, London is draped in a thick, grey fog that clings to the streets like a second skin. Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, step out of 221B Baker Street, our coats pulled tight against the damp chill. Holmes is in high spirits, his sharp eyes scanning the bustling city as we hail a hansom cab to Brook Street. I can tell he's already piecing together the puzzle of Dr. Trevelyan's strange tale, his mind racing ahead while I'm still catching up. "Watson," he says, leaning back in the cab. A man like Blessington, who hides behind wealth and secrecy, is rarely what he seems. We're about to meet a fox who thinks he's outrun the hounds. I nod, used to Holmes' cryptic remarks, but my curiosity is burning. Who is this Blessington, and what's got him so spooked? As the cab rattles through the foggy streets, I brace myself for whatever we're about to walk into. If you're loving this mystery as much as I am, hit that like button and let's dive into the heart of it. We arrive at Dr. Trevelyan's practice, a handsome red brick house on Brook Street, its polished brass plaque gleaming despite the gloom. Trevelyan greets us at the door, looking even more nervous than last night, his hands fidgeting with his glasses. He leads us inside, through a tidy waiting room filled with the faint smell of antiseptic and wax polish. The place feels more like a gentleman's home than a doctor's office, with plush carpets and heavy curtains that muffle the sounds of the city. Trevelyan explains that his consulting room is on the ground floor, while Blessington's private rooms are upstairs, along with Trevelyan's own quarters. Holmes takes it all in, his eyes darting from the polished banister to the locked door at the top of the stairs. Where is Mr. Blessington now? Holmes asks, his voice calm but direct. Trevelyan hesitates, then says Blessington's been locked in his room since last night, refusing to come out. Holmes raises an eyebrow, and I can practically hear the gears turning in his head. Something's not right, and we're about to find out what. Trevelyan knocks on Blessington's door, calling out in a shaky voice, but there's no answer. Holmes steps forward, his expression unreadable, and tries the handle. Locked. He kneels, peering at the keyhole, then pulls a small tool from his pocket, a habit I've learned not to question. With a soft click, the lock gives way and we step into Blessington's rooms. The air inside is stuffy, heavy with the scent of cigar smoke and fear. The room is a mess, paper scattered across a desk, a half-empty brandy glass tipped over, and a chair shoved against the wall as if someone braced it against the door. Blessington himself is there, a stout, red-faced man with thinning hair and wild eyes. Sitting on the edge of his bed, he jumps up when he sees us, his face a mix of relief and terror. "Dr. Trevelyan!" He gasps. "Who are these men, Trevelyan?" Introduces us, explaining that Holmes is here to help, but Blessington's eyes narrow, like a cornered animal sizing us up. Holmes, as usual, takes charge. He sits down, crossing his legs, and fixes Blessington with that piercing stare that seems to see right through people. "Mr. Blessington," he begins, "you're clearly a man under threat. Tell me everything, leave nothing out." Blessington stammers, wiping sweat from his brow, and spins a story that's half truth, half panic. He claims he's just a retired businessman, living quietly on his savings, but lately he's been getting strange letters, anonymous notes warning him to leave or pay the price. He swears he doesn't know who's sending them or why, but the two men who visited Trevelyan's practice last week have him convinced his life's in danger. Holmes listens, his face a mask, but I can tell he's skeptical. He asks to see the letters, and Blessington fumbles, saying he burned them out of fear. Holmes' lips twitch, just a hint of a smile, and I know he's caught the scent of a lie. He presses Blessington about the two men, and Blessington describes them vaguely foreign. Well dressed, one with a limp, just like Trevelyan said. but there's something off about his story, like he's reciting lines he's rehearsed too many times. Holmes stands pacing the room, his eyes scanning every detail, the scuff marks on the floor, the ash in the fireplace, the locked window with a faint scratch on the sill. I follow his gaze, trying to keep up, but Holmes sees things I never will. He stops, turning to Blessington with a question that cuts like a knife. Why did you choose Dr. Trevelyan, a doctor with no money and little fame, to fund with such generosity? Blessington blinks, caught off guard, and mumbles something about wanting to help a young talent. Holmes doesn't buy it, but he doesn't push yet. Instead, he asks to inspect the rest of the house, and Trevelyan leads us downstairs, leaving Blessington to his nerves. As we walk through the consulting room, Holmes pauses by a side door that leads to the street. "Is this always locked?" he asks. Trevelyan nods, but Holmes kneels again, examining the lock. "Fresh scratches," he mutters to me. "Someone's been tampering with this." My stomach tightens. Someone's been trying to get in or out without being seen. Back in the cab, Holmes is quiet, his fingers steepled under his chin. I know better than to interrupt when he's like this, but I can't help asking, "What do you make of it, Holmes?" He glances at me, his eyes gleaming. Blessington's no innocent retiree, Watson. He's a man with a past, and that past is catching up. Those scratches on the lock, the burned letters, his paranoia's all connected. We're dealing with a man who's running from something, or someone, and they're closer than he thinks. I feel a chill, not just from the fog outside. Holmes leans back, a faint smile on his lips. "We'll return tomorrow, Watson. I suspect things will get interesting." I nod, already dreading and craving what's next. This case is like a storm cloud gathering, and I can feel the first drops of rain. What's Blessington hiding? Are those mysterious men really after him, or is something else at play? In Chapter 3, we'll follow Holmes as he digs deeper into the clues, uncovering secrets that might put us all in danger. What do you think those scratches on the lock mean? Drop your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with this gripping mystery. The next day, London's fog is thicker than ever, wrapping the city in a grey shroud that muffles sound and blurs the edges of everything. Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, are back in a hansom cab, rattling toward Brook Street to dig deeper into Dr. Trevelyan's troubling case. Holmes is quieter than usual, his sharp eyes fixed on some invisible point, his mind clearly turning over the clues from yesterday. Blessington's paranoia, the scratched lock, the mysterious men. I'm itching to know what he's thinking, but I know better than to prod when he's in this mood. "Watson," he says at last, breaking the silence. "Fear makes men careless, and careless men leave traces. Today, we'll find those traces." His words send a shiver down my spine, not just because of the damp chill seeping through the cab's windows. We're heading into something murky, and I can feel the weight of it. If you're hooked on this mystery, smash that like button and let's uncover what's lurking in the shadows. We arrive at Dr. Trevelyan's practice, the red brick house looking even more imposing in the fog. Trevelyan meets us at the door, his face pale and his hands twisting nervously. "Thank heavens, you're here," he stammers. "Blessington's worse today. He barely slept, and he's been pacing all night." Holmes nods, his expression unreadable, and asks to see Blessington at once. We climb the stairs to his rooms, and I notice Holmes pausing to glance at the side door from yesterday, the one with the scratched lock. He doesn't say anything, but his quick look tells me he hasn't forgotten it. At Blessington's door, Trevelyan knocks, but there's no answer. Holmes tries the handle locked again. With a glance at me, he pulls out his tool, and in moments we're inside. The room is dim, the curtains drawn tight, and the air is thick with cigar smoke and tension. Blessington is slumped in a chair by the window, a glass of brandy in his hand, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He startles when he sees us, nearly spilling his drink. "What do you want?" he snaps, his voice hoarse. Holmes doesn't waste time. He sits across from Blessington, his gaze steady and piercing. "Mr. Blessington," he says, "you're not telling us everything." Those men who visited described them again, every detail. Blessington hesitates, his hands trembling, then repeats his vague story to foreigners. One older with a limp, the other younger, both asking odd questions about his health. But this time, he adds something new aslip, maybe. He mentions the older man had a scar across his cheek, faint but noticeable. Holmes' eyes narrow, and I know he's caught something I missed. He shifts tactics, asking about Blessington's life before he met Trevelyan. "You claim to be a retired businessman," Holmes says. "But what business? Where did your wealth come from?" Blessington bristles, muttering about investments and shipping. But his answers are evasive, like a man dodging traps. Holmes presses harder, asking about the anonymous letters Blessington claimed to have burned. "Surely you kept one," Holmes says, his voice calm but relentless. Blessington shakes his head. Too quickly, and I see sweat bead on his forehead. Holmes stands, pacing the room like a hunter circling prey. He examines the desk, the fireplace, the window, every inch of the place. I watch him, trying to follow his logic. He stops by the fireplace, kneeling to sift through the ashes. "Interesting," he murmurs, holding up a tiny scrap of paper, charred at the edges. It's too small to read, but Holmes pockets it with a satisfied nod. Then he turns to the window, where the faint scratch on the sill caught his eye yesterday. He runs his finger along it, then checks the latch. "This window's been forced," he says quietly, almost to himself. "Not recently, but within the last month. I feel a chill. Someone's been trying to get into this room. Maybe while Blessington slept." Trevelyan, hovering nervously, looks horrified. "You mean someone broke in?" he asks. Holmes doesn't answer, just gives him a look that says to stay quiet. Blessington, meanwhile, is watching Holmes like a man waiting for a guillotine to fall. We leave Blessington's room and head downstairs, where Holmes inspects the consulting room again. He lingers by the side door, kneeling to study the scratches on the lock. These are fresh. "Watson," he says, his voice low, "someone tried this lock last night, maybe even this morning." I glance at Trevelyan, who's gone white as a sheet. "Could it be a patient?" I ask. Holmes shakes his head. "Patients don't tamper with locks in the dead of night." He stands, brushing off his hands, and turns to Trevelyan. "Tell me about your staff. Who else has access to this house?" Trevelyan lists a maid, a cook, and a boy who runs errands, all of whom live out and leave by evening. Holmes listens, then asks to see the back alley behind the house. We step outside. The fog so thick I can barely see 10 feet ahead. The alley is narrow, lined with beans and crates, and Holmes moves like a bloodhound, checking the ground, the walls, even the cobblestones. He stops by a muddy patch near the side door, crouching to examine faint footprints. 2 men, he says, one heavier with a limp, the other lighter, quick on his feet. My heart races. Those sound like the men Blessington and Trevelyan described. Back inside, Holmes is all business. He tells Trevelyan to keep the side door bolted and to watch Blessington closely. "Don't let him out of your sight," Holmes warns. Trevelyan nods, looking like he might faint. As we climb back into the cab, I can't hold back any longer. "Holmes, what's going on? Is Blessington in real danger, or is he playing some kind of game?" Holmes leans back, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Oh, he's in danger, Watson, but not the kind he's telling us about. That man's past is a shadow, and it's creeping closer. Those footprints, the scratched lock, the forced window, they're not random. Someone's hunting him, and he knows why. I swallow hard, picturing those shadowy figures in the fog. Holmes taps the cab's window, a faint smile on his lips. We'll need to move quickly. Tomorrow, we'll set a trap. A trap. My stomach twists, but I know better than to ask for details. Holmes loves his surprises. What's Blessington's secret? And why are these men after him? Are they thieves, enemies, or something worse in Chapter 4? Holmes will start pulling at the threads of this mystery, and I have a feeling things are about to get dangerous. What do you think those footprints mean? Drop your guesses in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to stay with us on this thrilling case. The fog has lifted slightly by the time Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, returned to Baker Street after our unsettling visit to Dr. Trevelyan's practice. It's late afternoon, and the gaslights are flickering to life along the streets, casting a warm glow against the damp chill. Holmes is in one of his intense moods, his long fingers drumming on the armrest of our cab, his mind clearly racing through the tangle of clues we've uncovered. Blessington's evasive answers, the scratched lock, the forced window, and those ominous footprints in the alley. I'm used to his silences, but this one feels heavier, like the air before a thunderstorm. Watson, he says at last, his voice low. We're dealing with a man who's built a cage of lies, and now the bars are closing in. Tonight, we'll shake the cage and see what falls out. His words send a prickle down my spine. Holmes is planning something, and I know it's going to be bold. If you're as gripped by this mystery as I am, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's see what Holmes has up his sleeve. Back at 1B, Holmes wastes no time. He strides to his desk, pulling out maps, notebooks, and a small tin box filled with odds and ends, his detective's toolkit, as I call it. He spreads a map of London across the table, pinpointing Brook Street with a pencil. The alley behind Trevelyan's practice, he murmurs, is the key. Those footprints weren't left by chance. Our quarry is circling, and they'll strike soon. I lean over, trying to follow his logic, but Holmes is already 3 steps ahead. He explains his plan. We'll return to Brook Street tonight under cover of darkness and watch the house from the alley. If the mysterious men or anyone else tries to break in, we'll catch them in the act. It's risky, I think, picturing us skulking in the shadows, but Holmes' confidence is infectious. We'll need disguises, he says, pulling out a pair of warm coats and caps from a trunk. The fog will help, but we can't look like ourselves. I nod, though I'm not thrilled about playing dress-up in a cold, creepy alley. Before we leave, Holmes sends a telegram to Inspector Lestrade at Scotland Yard, asking him to have a constable patrol nearby, just in case things go south. It's not like Holmes to call for backup, so I know he's expecting trouble. He also instructs Mrs. Hudson to tell any visitors we're out for the evening, no interruptions. As we bundle up in our disguises, me in a threadbare overcoat and Holmes in a tattered scarf and slouch hat, I feel like we're stepping into one of those penny dreadfuls I used to read as a boy. Holmes, of course, looks perfectly at ease, his sharp features softened by the dim light. Watson, he says, slipping a small revolver into his pocket, bring your service pistol, and keep your wits about you. I pat the reassuring weight of my old army revolver in my coat, nodding grimly. Whatever's waiting in that alley, we'll face it together. We reach Brook Street just as night falls. The fog settling back in like a heavy curtain. The street is quiet, save for the occasional clop of a horse's hoofs or the distant shout of a cabby. Holmes leads me to the alley behind Trevelyan's practice, a narrow, damp passage that smells of rotting rubbish and coal dust. We find a spot behind a stack of crates, giving us a clear view of the side door with its scratched lock. Holmes crouches low, his eyes fixed on the door, while I try to ignore the chill creeping up my legs. "Patience. Watson," he whispers. "They'll come." I don't ask how he's so sure Holmes has a knack for being right about these things. We wait, the minutes stretching into an hour, then 2. My knees ache, and the fog seems to press closer, muffling even the sound of my own breathing. Just when I'm starting to think this is a waste of time, Holmes grips my arm. "There," he hisses, pointing to the shadows. 2 figures emerge from the fog, moving silently toward the side door. One is tall, limping slightly, his coat flapping around his knees. The other is shorter, quicker, his head darting side to side like a fox. They match Blessington's and Trevelyan's descriptions perfectly, the older man with the limp, the younger one with restless energy. The older man kneels by the door, pulling something from his pocket, a lockpick, I realize. Holmes' hand tightens on my arm, signaling me to stay still. The younger man stands watch, his eyes scanning the alley, and for a moment, I swear he looks right at us. My heart pounds, but Holmes' grip keeps me grounded. The older man works quickly, the lock clicking softly, and the door swings open. They slip inside, as silent as ghosts. Holmes waits a beat, then motions for me to follow. We creep toward the door, Holmes moving like a cat, me trying not to trip over my own feet. Inside, the house is dark, the only sound the faint creak of floorboards above. Holmes leads the way, his revolver drawn, and I keep mine ready, my pulse racing. We climb the stairs to Blessington's rooms, where a sliver of light spills from under his door. Holmes pauses, listening, then pushes the door open. The room is empty. Blessington's gone. The bed is unmade, papers are strewn across the desk, and the window is wide open, curtains fluttering in the night air. Holmes rushes to the window, leaning out to scan the alley below. "They've taken him," he says, his voice sharp with frustration. I join him, spotting 2 figures hurrying away through the fog. A third figure, Blessington, I think, slumped between them. Holmes curses under his breath, a rare crack in his calm. "We were too slow, Watson, but not too late." He bolts for the stairs, and I follow, my mind spinning. Did they kidnap Blessington, or did he go willingly? We race into the alley, but the figures are gone, swallowed by the fog. Holmes kneels by the muddy patch where we saw the footprints before, studying fresh marks. 3 sets now, he says. Blessington's boots see the worn heel. He was dragged, not walking. My stomach twists at the thought. Holmes stands, his face grim. "We need to find them, Watson, before they finish whatever they've started." He heads back to the house, insisting we search Blessington's rooms for clues. Inside, we find the desk in disarray, drawers yanked open, papers spilling out. Holmes sifts through them, his hands moving with precision. He pulls out a photograph. Faded but clear, a group of men in rough clothing, standing by a river bank. One face stands out. Blessington, younger, with a scar across his cheek. I gasp. Holmes, isn't that the scar he described on one of the men? Holmes nods, his eyes blazing. Blessington lied, Watson. That scar is his own. He's not the victim here, he's the key. What does this photograph mean? Is Blessington one of the mysterious men he's so afraid of? And where have they taken him? In Chapter 5, Holmes will chase this new lead, and we'll get closer to unraveling Blessington's dark past. Drop your theories in the comments. What do you think that photograph is hiding? Like and subscribe to keep up with this twisty mystery. And let's see where the trail leads next. The night is thick with fog as Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, stand in Blessington's empty room, the open window letting in a damp chill that matches the unease in my gut. The photograph Holmes found a faded image of Blessington, with a scar across his cheek, Standing among rough-looking men by a riverbank has turned this case on its head. Holmes' eyes are alight with that fierce intensity he gets when a mystery starts to crack open. "Watson," he says, slipping the photograph into his pocket. "This is no ordinary case of a frightened man. Blessington's past is a locked box, and this picture is the key. We need to find out who those men are and why they've come for him. My mind is racing. Blessington lied about the scar, maybe about everything. Was he kidnapped? Or is he running from his own history?" Holmes is already moving, barking orders to search the room for more clues. The game is heating up, and I can feel the danger closing in. If you're as hooked as I am, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's dive deeper into this twisted tale. We tear through Blessington's room, Holmes with his usual methodical precision, me trying to keep up. The desk is a mess, letters, receipts, and scraps of paper scattered like leaves in a storm. Holmes sifts through them, his long fingers flipping pages with the speed of a card sharp. He pauses at a torn envelope, the address smudged but readable. "Mr. Sutton, 17 River Lane, Limehouse." Holmes' lips twitch in that half-smile he gets when a clue fits into place. Limehouse. He murmurs, "A rough part of town, Watson. Not the sort of place a wealthy retiree like Blessington would have connections. Unless he's not what he claims." I nod, picturing the gritty docks and shadowy alleys of Limehouse, a place where secrets fester like damp rot. Holmes pockets the envelope and moves to the fireplace, where he finds more charred paper fragments. He pieces them together like a puzzle, revealing a single phrase: Worthington Gang. My heart skips. I've heard of them, thieves and worse, a notorious crew from years back, known for bank jobs and disappearing without a trace. Could Blessington be tied to them? Holmes doesn't stop to explain. He's already at the wardrobe, rifling through Blessington's clothes. Hidden in a coat pocket, he finds a small brass key, worn but sturdy. This, he says, holding it up, opens something important. A safe, a lockbox, maybe a door to his past. I'm about to ask more when we hear a creak downstairs. Holmes freezes his hand on his revolver. "Quiet, Watson," he whispers. We creep to the stairs, my pulse pounding in my ears. The house is dark, but a faint glow flickers from the consulting room below. Holmes motions for me to follow, and we descend, silent as shadows. The side door, the one with the scratched lock, is ajar, swaying slightly in the night air. Someone's been here, or still is. Holmes peers into the consulting room, his eyes narrowing. A single candle burns on the desk, wax dripping onto a medical chart. Beside it lies a crumpled note, scrawled in haste. "Meet at the docks, midnight." No tricks. It's unsigned, but the handwriting matches the smudged envelope from Limehouse. Holmes snatches the note, his face grim. "They've taken Blessington to the docks," he says. "This is our chance, Watson, but we must move quickly." We hurry back to Baker Street to regroup, the fog wrapping around us like a cloak. At 1B, Holmes pulls out his files. Thick folders stuffed with newspaper clippings and police reports. He's obsessive about keeping records, and tonight it pays off. He finds a clipping from 1875 about the Worthington Gang, a band of robbers who pulled off a daring bank heist in London, vanishing with a fortune in gold. The article mentions a traitor in the gang, a man who turned on his partners and disappeared. Blessington, Holmes says, tapping the photograph, or should I say, Sutton. That scar, the timing, it fits. He betrayed the Worthington Gang, took the gold and reinvented himself as a wealthy retiree. Now, his old partners have found him. I'm stunned. Blessington, a criminal? It explains his paranoia, the locked doors, the lies about the scar. But why fund Trevelyan's practice? Holmes has a theory. Affront Watson. A respectable doctor's office is the perfect cover for a man hiding from his past. Trevelyan was young, broke and eager a perfect pawn. My mind reels, but Holmes is already planning. The dock's at midnight, he says. That's where we'll find them, but we need backup. He scribbles another telegram to Inspector Lestrade, asking for two constables to meet us near Limehouse at 11. I'm not thrilled about heading to the docks dark, dangerous, and crawling with trouble, but Holmes' determination is contagious. We grab our coats, check our revolvers and head out, the brass key tucked safely in Holmes' pocket. The journey to Limehouse is tense, the cab rattling through streets that grow narrower and grimmer with every turn. The fog is a blessing and a curse, hiding us but also cloaking our quarry. We stop a block from River Lane, dismissing the cab and moving on foot. The docks are alive with the creak of ships and the low voices of workers, but the fog keeps everything blurred like a dream. Holmes leads me to a shadowed corner near a warehouse, where we spot Lestrade's constables waiting. Holmes briefs them in hushed tones. Watch the alley, stay out of sight, and move only on his signal. I can see the doubt in their eyes. Holmes isn't exactly a Scotland Yard favourite, but they nod and take their positions. Holmes and I creep closer to 17 River Lane, a dilapidated building with boarded windows and a sagging roof. The air smells of tar and salt water, and my nerves are on edge. Holmes points to a faint light flickering through a crack in the warehouse door. We inch closer, hearing muffled voices inside, angry, urgent. I catch a few words: gold, traitor, no. More chances. Holmes' eyes gleam. They're in there. He whispers, Blessington and his old gang. Stay close, Watson. He tests the door, finding it unlocked, and we slip inside. The warehouse is a maze of crates and barrels, the air thick with dust. In a cleared space near the back, we see them. Blessington, tied to a chair, his face pale and bruised, the older. Nan with the limp, brandishing a knife, and the younger man, pacing like a caged animal. They're arguing, their voices low but heated. You thought you could hide forever, Sutton. The older man snarls. Blessington Sutton shakes his head, pleading. I didn't take it all, I swear. The younger man laughs, a cold, bitter sound. Then where's the rest of the gold? Holmes signals me to stay low, his hand on his revolver. I grip mine, my heart hammering. We're outnumbered, and the constables are still outside. Holmes leans in, whispering, we need a distraction. Before I can argue, he picks up a small crate and hurls it across the warehouse. It crashes against a stack of barrels, the noise echoing like a gunshot. The two men spin around, startled, and Holmes uses the moment to step forward. His voice calm but commanding. Gentlemen, he says, I suggest you drop the knife. The older man hesitates, then lunges toward Blessington, but Holmes is faster, firing a warning shot into the air. The constables burst in, shouting, and in the chaos, the younger man bolts for a side door. Holmes tackles him, pinning him to the ground, while the constables subdue the older man. Blessington, still tied up, looks like he's seen a ghost dot as the constables cuff the men. Holmes kneels by Blessington, cutting his ropes. Your game's up, Sutton, he says. Blessington collapses, sobbing, but says nothing. Holmes finds a small lockbox under a crate, and the brass key fits perfectly. Inside is a stash of gold coins, part of the Worthington Gang's haul. The pieces are falling into place, but there's still more to uncover. Who are these men, and what's their full connection to Blessington? In Chapter 6, we'll interrogate our captives and dig deeper into the Worthington Gang's bloody past. What do you think Blessington will reveal? Drop your guesses in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to follow this thrilling case to its end. The warehouse in Limehouse is a chaotic scene as Sherlock Holmes and I Dr. John Watson, stand amidst the aftermath of our confrontation. The fog outside seems to seep into the air, mixing with the dust and the sharp tang of fear. Blessington or rather, Sutton is slumped in his chair, ropes cut, but his spirit broken, his face a mask of defeat. The two men from the Worthington Gang, the older one with the limp and the younger one with the nervous energy, are now handcuffed, glaring at Holmes with a mix of defiance and dread. Inspector Lestrade's constables are securing the scene, their lanterns casting jittery shadows across the crates and barrels. Holmes, as always, is the calm centre of the storm, his sharp eyes taking in every detail the lockbox of gold coins, the crumpled note, the photograph still tucked in his pocket. "Watson," he says, his voice low but firm, "we've caught the hounds, but the fox's secrets are still buried. Let's dig them up." My heart's still pounding from the scuffle, but I nod, ready for whatever comes next. If you're loving this twisty mystery, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's unravel the truth together. Holmes starts with the lockbox, spilling its contents onto a crate. The gold coins glint in the lantern light, each one a piece of the Worthington Gang's infamous 1875 bank heist. There's not as much as I'd expected, maybe a fraction of the reported haul, but it's enough to confirm Holmes' theory. Blessington, or Sutton, was no innocent retiree. He was a traitor who double-crossed his gang and ran with their spoils. Holmes turns to Sutton, who's avoiding his gaze, staring at the floor like it might swallow him whole. "Mr. Sutton," Holmes says, his tone cutting like a blade, "your partners here seem to think you owe them something. Care to explain?" Sutton shakes his head, muttering about mistakes and regrets, but his words are vague, slippery. Holmes doesn't push yet. Instead, he shifts his attention to the two gang members, who Lestrade's men have identified as James Carver, the older man with the limp, and Tommy Brierly, the younger one. Carver's face is weathered, his scar matching the one in the photograph, though older and faded. Brierly's younger, all sharp angles and restless energy, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. Holmes starts with Carver kneeling to meet his gaze. "You tracked Sutton down after all these years," Holmes says. "Why now? And what's this about a final warning?" Carver snarls, spitting on the floor. "He betrayed us," he growls. "Took the gold, left us to rot in prison. We've been hunting him since we got out." Brierly nods, his voice high and bitter. "He thought he could hide behind a fancy doctor's office, but we found him. That warning was his last chance to give up the gold." Holmes raises an eyebrow, glancing at the lockbox, and this wasn't enough. Carver laughs, a harsh, grating sound. "That's a drop in the bucket. He's got more hidden somewhere. He always was a greedy bastard." Holmes steps back, piecing it together. He pulls out the photograph, holding it up for Carver to see. "This was taken by the Thames, wasn't it? Before the heist, when you were all partners." Carver's eyes flicker, a mix of surprise and anger, but he doesn't deny it. Holmes presses on, asking about the Worthington Gang's final job, a daring raid on the Bank of London, where they tunneled into the vault and escaped with thousands in gold. The papers called it the crime of the century, but the gang vanished, betrayed from within. "Sutton turned on you," Holmes says, not a question. Carver nods, his jaw tight. "He tipped off the police, took the gold and ran. We did 5 years in Dartmoor because of him." Brierly chimes in, his voice shaking with rage. "When we got out, we swore we'd make him pay. Tracked him from Bristol to London, found him playing the rich gent with that doctor." I'm stunned, piecing it together. Sutton used the stolen gold to fund Trevelyan's practice, building a respectable front to hide his criminal past. But why stay in London, where his old gang could find him? Holmes seems to read my mind. Fear and greed, Watson, he says quietly, Sutton couldn't leave the gold behind, but he couldn't trust anyone else to guard it. So he stayed close, hiding in plain sight. He turns back to Sutton, who's still silent, his hands trembling. Where's the rest of the gold, Sutton? Holmes asks, his voice like steel. Sutton mumbles something about it being gone, spent, but Holmes isn't buying it. He nods to Lestrade, who agrees to take the 3 men to Scotland Yard for further questioning. As the constables haul them away, Holmes lingers, searching the warehouse for more clues. He finds a scrap of paper tucked under a crate, with a single word, vault. My stomach twists. Is there another stash hidden somewhere? Back at Baker Street, Holmes is restless, pacing by the fire. The Worthington Gang's gold isn't just money, Watson. He says, it's a curse. Sutton's been running from it for years, but it's caught up with him. He spreads the photograph, the envelope and the note on the table, his mind working overtime. This vault, he says, tapping the scrap of paper, it's not in Limehouse. Sutton's too clever for that. It's somewhere closer to Brook Street, somewhere he could check on it. I suggest Trevelyan's practice, but Holmes shakes his head. Too obvious. But nearby, yes. We'll search tomorrow. I feel a mix of dread and excitement. Holmes is closing in, but the danger's far from over. Carver and Brierly aren't the forgiving type, and Sutton's silence feels like a ticking bomb. What's in this mysterious vault? And will Sutton finally break under pressure in Chapter 7? We'll head back to Brook Street to hunt for the hidden gold and uncover more of Sutton's lies. Drop your theories in the comments. What do you think the vault holds? Like and subscribe to stay with us on this thrilling chase. Dawn breaks over London, the fog thinning to a pale mist as Sherlock Holmes and I prepare to return to Brook Street. The events of last night, the warehouse, the Worthington Gang, Sutton's betrayal have left me sleepless, my mind buzzing with questions. Holmes, of course, is as sharp as ever, sipping his morning coffee with an air of quiet determination. He's dressed in his usual tweed, but there's a glint in his eye that tells me he's onto something big. Watson, he says, slipping the brass key and the photograph into his pocket. Today we'll find Sutton's vault. Or I'm not Sherlock Holmes. The man's built a house of secrets and we're about to tear it down. I nod, grabbing my coat and revolver, feeling the weight of the case pressing on me. The Worthington Gang's gold, Sutton's lies. That cryptic note about a vault, it's all leading us somewhere dangerous. If you're gripped by this mystery, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's crack this case wide open. We arrive at Dr. Trevelyan's practice just as the morning sun breaks through the mist. Trevelyan is waiting, looking like he hasn't slept in days, his glasses fogged with nervous sweat. Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson. He stammers, what's happened to Blessington? The police came by last night, but they wouldn't tell me anything. Holmes brushes past him, his focus razor sharp. Suddenly your Blessington is in custody, along with 2 of his old associates. But we're not done here, Dr. Trevelyan. Your house holds secrets and I intend to find them. Trevelyan blinks, confused, but follows us inside, wringing his hands. The practice feels different today. Less like a doctor's office, more like a stage for some dark drama. Holmes heads straight for the consulting room, his eyes scanning every corner. I can tell he's looking for something out of place, something that screams vault. Holmes starts with the side door, the one with the scratched lock. He kneels, examining it again, then moves to the walls, tapping lightly with his knuckles. Hollow spaces, Watson, he says. Old houses like this are full of them. Sutton needed somewhere secure, somewhere he could access without drawing attention. I join in, checking the floorboards for loose panels, but everything seems solid. Trevelyan watches, bewildered. muttering about how he never suspected Blessington was anything but a patient. Holmes ignores him, moving upstairs to Blessington's rooms. The place is still a mess, papers scattered, the bed unmade, the window still open from last. Night's escape! Holmes goes straight to the fireplace where he found the charred paper fragments. Fireplaces are classic hiding spots, he says, running his hands along the bricks. He presses one, and with a soft click, a small panel slides open, revealing a dusty recess. My heart leaps, but it's empty, just cobwebs and soot. Holmes frowns, undeterred. Not here, then, but close. We search the room top to bottom, checking under the rug, behind the wardrobe, even inside the mattress. Nothing. Holmes pauses by the desk, flipping through the scattered papers again. He finds a ledger, its pages filled with numbers and cryptic notes, expenses for the practice. He murmurs, but look here, regular payments to A.J. Barlow, 12 Brook Mews. That's just around the corner. I catch his drift, a second location. Maybe where the vault is hidden. Holmes pockets the ledger and heads downstairs, telling Trevelyan to stay put. We'll be back, he says, his tone leaving no room for argument. Trevelyan nods, looking like a man who's just realized his whole world is a lie. Brook Mews is a narrow, cobbled lane a stone's throw from the practice, lined with small workshops and storage sheds. Number 12 is a squat, brick building with a padlocked door. Holmes pulls out the brass key, and it fits perfectly, the lock clicking open with a satisfying thud inside. The air is damp and musty, the space cluttered with crates and old furniture. Holmes moves with purpose, his lantern casting long shadows as he searches for the vault. I follow, my revolver ready, half expecting Carver or Brierly to jump out. At the back of the room, Holmes finds a heavy iron door built into the wall, barely noticeable behind a stack of boxes. The brass key fits here too, and with a groan, the door swings open, revealing a small, reinforced chamber. Inside are sacks of gold coins, stacks of banknotes, and a bundle of letters tied with string. It's the rest of the Worthington Gang's haul. Hidden all these years? Holmes opens one of the letters, his eyes scanning it quickly. Correspondence with a fence in Bristol. He says, Sutton was selling off the gold bit by bit, using the profits to fund Trevelyan's practice and his own comfortable life. I'm floored Sutton's been playing a long game, but his past caught up anyway. Holmes backs up the evidence, leaving the gold for Lestrade's men to collect. As we step back into the mews, I hear a noise, a scuffle in the shadows. Holmes spins, his revolver drawn, but it's just a stray cat knocking over a tin can. We both laugh, the tension breaking for a moment, but I know this case isn't over. Sutton's in custody. The gold's found, but what about the rest of the Worthington Gang? Are there more out there, waiting to strike? Back at Scotland Yard, Holmes hands over the evidence to Lestrade, who's grudgingly impressed. Sutton, Carver, and Brierly are locked up, but Holmes insists on questioning Sutton one last time. In a dim cell, Sutton looks broken, his bravado gone. I just wanted a new life, he whispers. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Holmes leans in, his voice cold. You betrayed your partners, stole their gold, and put an innocent doctor in danger. Your new life was built on lies. Sutton says nothing, his head in his hands. As we leave, Holmes is quiet, but I can tell he's satisfied for now. The case is nearly closed, Watson, he says, but there's one last thread to pull. What's left to uncover? In Chapter 8, we'll tie up the loose ends and face one final twist. What do you think Holmes missed? Drop your guesses in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for the thrilling conclusion. The morning after our discovery at Brook Mews, London feels quieter, as if the city itself is catching its breath. Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, Sit in our familiar rooms at 221B Baker Street, the fire crackling softly as a rare autumn. Sun filters through the windows. The Worthington Gang's gold is now in Scotland Yard's hands, and Sutton, once known as Blessington, along with his former partners, Carver and Brierley, are behind bars, yet Holmes is restless, his long fingers tapping a rhythm on the arm of his chair, his eyes distant. "Watson," he says, breaking the silence, "a case like this is a tapestry, and we've woven most of the threads, but there's one left dangling, and I won't rest until it's tied. I know that look Holmes senses something we've missed, a final piece of the puzzle that could unravel everything." My pulse quickens at the thought of diving back into the mystery. If you're as eager to see this case closed as I am, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's chase down the last clue together. Holmes pulls out the bundle of letters we found in the vault, spreading them across the table like a deck of cards. They're written in different hands, some in code, others in plain English, all addressed to Sutton or aliases he used over the years. Holmes deciphers the coded ones with ease, his mind slicing through the cryptic symbols like a knife through butter. These are from the Worthington Gang's early days. He explains instructions for heists, rendezvous points, even threats to members who stepped out of line. One letter catches his eye. Its ink faded, but the tone urgent. "Sutton, you've gone too far. The others won't wait forever. Return what's ours, or the Thames will claim you." It's signed with a single initial, W. Holmes' eyes narrow. The gang's leader, he says, not Carver or Brierley. Someone else, someone still out there. My stomach twists. Could there be another player in this deadly game? Watching from the shadows, Holmes decides we need to revisit Dr. Trevelyan's practice one last time. If there's another member of the Worthington Gang, they'll know the gold's been found, he says, and they'll come looking either for revenge or to cover their tracks. We grab our coats and head to Brook Street, the brass key still in Holmes' pocket as a precaution. Trevelyan meets us at the door, looking more haggard than ever. "Mr. Holmes, is it over?" he asks, his voice trembling. "Can I have my life back?" Holmes gives him a sharp look. "Not yet, Doctor. Your house has been a stage for deception, and the curtain hasn't fallen." Trevelyan pales but lets us in, trailing behind like a lost puppy. The practice feels eerie now, its once polished rooms tainted by the secrets we've uncovered. Holmes heads straight for the consulting room, his eyes scanning for anything we might have missed. He pauses by a bookshelf, its volumes neatly arranged medical texts, mostly. But one book stands out, a worn copy of The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe. Holmes pulls it down, flipping through the pages. Tucked inside is a folded note. Its edges yellowed, but the handwriting clear. "Sutton," it reads, "the game ends at the old mill. Midnight, the 15th of July. W. The date is from 2 weeks ago, just before the mysterious men appeared at the practice." Holmes' face lights up, a rare spark of excitement. "The old mill," he says. "There's a derelict mill near the Thames, not far from Limehouse. It's where the Worthington Gang used to meet, according to my files. I'm stunned, another rendezvous, and we missed it." But Holmes isn't discouraged. "This W is the key, Watson. The mastermind behind the gang, and likely the one pulling the strings now." We head to the old mill, a crumbling brick structure on the riverbank, its wheel long broken and the air heavy with the smell of mud and decay. The fog is light today, but the place feels haunted, its windows like empty eyes. Holmes moves with purpose, checking the ground for fresh tracks. He finds scuff marks near the entrance, recent enough to suggest someone's been here. Inside, the mill is a maze of rotting beams and rusted machinery, the floor littered with debris. Holmes lights a lantern, its glow revealing a small table. In the corner, covered with dust but marked by fresh fingerprints. On it lies a single item, a silver cigarette case, engraved with the initial W. Holmes picks it up, his fingers tracing the engraving. Our man was here, he says, and recently. I feel a chill. This W is no ghost, he's real. And he's close. Holmes searches the table, finding a hidden drawer beneath. Inside is a map of London marked with red ink. Brook Street, Limehouse, and a third location, a pawnshop in Whitechapel. Another hiding spot, Holmes says, or a meeting point. We decide to check the pawnshop, but first, Holmes wants to confront Sutton one last time. Back at Scotland Yard, Sutton is a shadow of himself, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow. Holmes shows him the cigarette case and the note. Who is W? He demands. Sutton flinches, his voice barely a whisper. Wilson, he says. Jack Wilson, the brains of the gang. He planned the heist, swore he'd kill me if I betrayed him. Sutton admits Wilson sent the warning letters, trying to scare him into returning the gold. He's still out there, Sutton whispers. He'll never stop. Holmes leans back, satisfied but alert. Wilson's the final thread, Watson. A man like that doesn't give up easily. We head to the Whitechapel pawnshop, a dingy hole in the wall reeking of old leather and cheap tobacco. The owner, a nervous man with a twitchy eye, claims he knows nothing about Wilson, but Holmes spots a familiar silver cigarette case behind the counter. A recent sale? Holmes asks, his tone deceptively mild. The owner stammers, admitting a man matching Wilson's description, tall, grey-haired, with a sharp jaw, dropped it off yesterday. Holmes buys the case, finding a tiny note tucked inside. Brook Street tonight. My heart races. Wilson's planning something, and we're running out of time. We race back to Brook Street, arriving just as dusk settles. Holmes stations Lestrade's constables nearby, then hides us in the alley behind the practice. The wait is agonizing, the night air cold and heavy. Just past 10, a figure appears, a tall man, grey-haired, moving with quiet confidence. It's Wilson. He approaches the side door, lockpick in hand, but Holmes is faster, stepping out with his revolver raised. Jack Wilson, he calls. Your game's over. Wilson freezes, his eyes cold and calculating, then bolts. I chase after him, my legs burning, while Holmes signals the constables. We corner Wilson in the alley, where he fights like a trapped wolf, but the constables overpower him. As they cuff him, Holmes searches his pockets, finding another coded letter, orders to eliminate Sutton and reclaim the gold. With Wilson in custody, the case feels complete, but Holmes is thorough. He returns to the practice, ensuring no more surprises lurk in its walls. Trevelyan, shaken but relieved, vows to start fresh, free of Sutton's shadow. Back at Baker Street, Holmes lights his pipe, a rare smile on his face, a tidy case. Watson, he says, greed and betrayal unraveled by a few footprints and a photograph. I nod, exhausted but satisfied, ready to write this one up for posterity. What will Holmes tackle next in Chapter 9? We'll wrap up the loose ends and see how this case changes Trevelyan's life. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did you see Wilson coming? Like and subscribe to catch the thrilling conclusion of this Sherlock Holmes adventure. The sun rises over London, casting a golden glow through the windows of 221B Baker Street, where Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, sit with the morning papers. The Worthington Gang case has left its mark. Sutton, Carver, Brierly, and now Jack Wilson are all in Scotland Yard's custody, the stolen gold recovered, and Dr. Trevelyan's practice freed from its dark secrets. Yet, as I sip my tea, I sense Holmes is not entirely at ease. He's lounging in his armchair, pipe in hand, but his sharp eyes are fixed on the bundle of letters from the vault, as if they still hold some unanswered question. "Watson," he says, exhaling a cloud of smoke, "a case like this is a spider's web cut one thread." And the others tremble. "We've caught the spiders, but we must ensure the web is gone. I know that Tone Holmes is tying up loose ends, and he won't rest until every detail is resolved. If you're as invested in this mystery as I am, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's close this case with a flourish." Holmes begins by revisiting the evidence, spreading the letters, the photograph, and the silver cigarette case across the table. The coded messages, now deciphered, paint a vivid picture of the Worthington Gang's operations and network of heists planned with military precision, led by the cunning Jack Wilson. But one letter stands out, a cryptic note mentioning a final reckoning planned for Sutton, dated just days before the mysterious men appeared at Trevelyan's practice. Holmes taps it thoughtfully. Wilson was methodical, he says. He didn't just want the gold he wanted Sutton to suffer for, his betrayal. But there's something else here, Watson. A hint of another player, someone who knew Sutton's movements but stayed in the shadows. My heart skips. Could there be another member of the gang, still at large? Holmes' instincts are rarely wrong, and I brace myself for one last twist. We head to Scotland Yard to question Sutton again, hoping to squeeze out any remaining secrets. The cell is cold and dim, and Sutton looks like a man who's aged a decade overnight. His once robust frame is hunched, his eyes dull with resignation. Holmes wastes no time, holding up the final reckoning letter. "Who else knew you? We're hiding in Brook Street," he demands. Sutton flinches, his hands trembling. "No one," he insists, but his voice cracks. Holmes leans closer, his gaze piercing. "You're lying, Sutton. Wilson found you too easily. Someone tipped him off someone close to you." Sutton's eyes dart away, and after a long pause, he mutters a name, Mary Harper. My jaw drops. A woman. Holmes presses further, and Sutton confesses that Mary was his housekeeper in Bristol years ago, before he moved to London. "She knew about the gold," he admits. "I thought she was loyal, but she must have talked." Holmes exchanges a glance with me, his mind already racing. A housekeeper with knowledge of Sutton's past could have been the link to Wilson, feeding him information to track down the traitor. We leave Scotland Yard and head to Bristol. A quick train ride that feels endless as I ponder this new lead. Holmes is quiet, studying the photograph of the Worthington Gang, as if Mary Harper might be hiding in its faded edges. In Bristol, we track down Mary Harper's last known address, a modest cottage on the city's outskirts. The current tenant, an elderly widow, tells us Mary left years ago, rumored to have moved to London after working for a wealthy gentleman. Holmes' eyes gleam. This fits Sutton's story. The widow adds a chilling detail. Mary was seen with a tall, grey-haired man before she left, a man who matches Wilson's description. I feel a chill. Mary wasn't just a housekeeper, she was a conspirator. Back in London, Holmes digs into his network of informants, the Baker Street irregulars, to find Mary Harper. By evening, one of his street urchins reports a sighting, a woman matching her description, now in her 50s, living in a boarding house in Whitechapel. We head there at once. The streets growing darker and more crowded as we approach. The boarding house is a shabby affair, its hall smelling of cabbage and damp wood. The landlady points us to Mary's room, but warns she's a private sort. Holmes knocks, and a sharp-eyed woman with greying hair answers, her face hardening. When she sees us, "Mary Harper," Holmes says, his voice calm but firm. "We need to talk about Sutton and the Worthington Gang." Mary's eyes widen, but she recovers quickly, inviting us in with a forced smile. Her room is sparse, with a single chair and a worn table, but Holmes notices a locked trunk in the corner. He wastes no time, laying out the evidence Sutton's confession, the letters Wilson's capture. Mary's composure cracks, her hands twisting in her lap. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," she says at last. "Sutton promised me a share of the gold, but he left me with nothing. When Wilson found me, I told him where Sutton was hiding. I just wanted what was owed me." Holmes listens, his face unreadable, then asks about the trunk. Mary hesitates, then unlocks it, revealing a small stash of gold coins her cut from. Sutton's betrayal. "I took what I could before he ran to London," she admits. Holmes nods, signaling me to note her confession. He doesn't arrest her. Mary's no mastermind, just a pawn in a larger game, but he warns her to stay put for Scotland Yard's questions. With Mary's confession, the case feels complete. We return to Brook Street to update Dr. Trevelyan, who's packing up his practice, shaken by the betrayal under his roof. "I trusted Blessington," he says, his voice hollow. "How do I move on?" Holmes, surprisingly gentle, advises him to rebuild, perhaps in a new city, free of ghosts. Trevelyan nods, a spark of hope in his eyes. Back at Baker Street, Holmes lights his pipe, the tension finally easing from his frame. "A sordid affair, Watson," he says, "but justice is served. Sutton's greed undid him, and his gang paid the price." I start drafting my notes for this case, already picturing it as one of our strangest adventures. The Worthington Gang is finished, their gold recovered, and Trevelyan can start anew. What's next for Holmes and me in Chapter 10? We'll reflect on this case's lessons and hint at our next adventure. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did you suspect Mary Harper? Like and subscribe to join us for the final chapter of this thrilling Sherlock Holmes mystery. The case of the Worthington Gang has drawn to a close, and Sherlock Holmes and I, Dr. John Watson, are back in the familiar warmth of 21B Baker Street. It's a crisp evening in late autumn 1887, and the fire in our sitting room casts a cozy glow, chasing away the chill of London's streets. The papers are full of the gang's capture. Sutton, Carver, Briley, and the elusive Jack Wilson, all behind bars, their stolen gold now locked away in Scotland Yard's vaults. Mary Harper, the housekeeper who betrayed Sutton, awaits her own reckoning, her small stash of coins confiscated. Dr. Trevelyan is packing up his practice, ready to leave Brook Street's shadows behind. Yet, as I sit with my notebook, penning the final details of this strange adventure, Holmes is unusually quiet, his pipe sending curls of smoke toward the ceiling. "Watson," he says at last, his voice soft but sharp, "every case teaches us something, even one as tangled as this. Greed is a cruel master, and secrets are poor armor." I nod, sensing this is more than just a case for him. It's a lesson in human nature. If you've loved unraveling this mystery with us, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's wrap up this tale together. Holmes sets his pipe down, leaning forward in his armchair, his eyes glinting in the firelight. "This case, Watson, was a study in deception," he says. "Sutton thought he could outrun his past, but the past is patient. It waits. I think back to the beginning, Trevelyan's nervous visit, Blessington's paranoia, the scratched lock, and that faded photograph that cracked the case wide open." Holmes walks me through his reasoning, piecing together the clues like a master weaver. The photograph of the Worthington Gang, with Sutton's scarred face, was the first thread, hinting at his true identity. The scratched lock and forced window showed someone was hunting him, while the footprints in the alley confirmed it was no random threat. The coded letters, the silver cigarette case, and Mary Harper's confession tied it all together, a web of betrayal spun over a decade, driven by greed for a fortune in gold. I ask Holmes why Sutton chose Trevelyan, a struggling young doctor. To hide behind convenience and control, Holmes replies, Trevelyan was desperate, talented, and naive perfect for Sutton's needs. A medical practice gave him respectability, a shield against suspicion, but he underestimated his old partner's persistence. I nod, thinking of poor Trevelyan, caught in a game he didn't know he was playing. Holmes' insight into human motives never ceases to amaze me. Sutton's greed, Wilson's vengeance, Murray's bitterness all played their parts like actors in a grim tragedy. And the vault in Brook Mews, I ask. Holmes smiles faintly. Sutton's fatal mistake. He couldn't let the gold go, so he kept it close, checking it like a miser. That's what drew Wilson's attention. Sutton's own paranoia betrayed him. We turn to the practical lessons of the case. Holmes, ever the teacher, points out how small details like the scratches on a lock or a misplaced cigarette case can unravel even the cleverest schemes. Observation, Watson, he says, is the detective's greatest weapon. A man may lie, but his habits speak truth. I jot this down, knowing it'll make a fine addition to my account. He also reflects on the Worthington Gang's downfall. They were clever, but divided. He says, a gang built on trust can survive. One built on greed crumbles. I think of the photograph, those men standing together by the Thames, unaware their alliance would end in betrayal. It's a sobering thought, and I wonder how many other secrets lie buried in London's underbelly, waiting for Holmes to unearth them. Holmes rises, pacing by the fire, his restlessness returning. This case was satisfying, Watson, but it's done. The mind craves new challenges. I laugh, used to his insatiable hunger for puzzles. I ask what he thinks will become of Trevelyan. Holmes pauses, his expression softening. He's a good man, misled but not broken. He'll start anew, perhaps in the country where patients need him more than secrets do. I hope he's right. Trevelyan deserves a fresh start after being entangled in Sutton's web. As for the Worthington Gang, their story is over. Their gold returned to its rightful owners, or as close as Scotland Yard can manage. Inspector Lestrade, grudgingly grateful, sent a note thanking Holmes, though I suspect he'll never admit how much he relied on us. I close my notebook, the case fully recorded, and look at Holmes, who's now gazing out the window at the bustling street below. What's next, Holmes? I ask. He turns, a spark in his eyes. Something will come, Watson. It always does. A cry in the night, a knock at the door. London never runs out of mysteries. I smile, feeling that familiar thrill of anticipation. This case, with its twists and dangers, has only sharpened our appetite for the next. The Worthington Gang may be gone, but Baker Street is never quiet for long. I think of the fog, the footprints, the glint of gold in that hidden vault, and I know this story will stay with me, a testament to Holmes' genius and the strange paths we tread together. As we settle by the fire, Holmes picks up his violin, drawing the bow across the strings in a haunting melody. It's his way of closing a chapter, letting the music carry away the case's weight. I lean back, my mind drifting to our readers, yes, you, watching this tale unfold. This adventure has been a wild ride, from Trevelyan's desperate plea to Wilson's capture in the alley. What did you think of it? Did the photograph surprise you? Or did you guess Sutton's secret early on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your theories. If you've enjoyed this journey through Victorian London, give us a like and hit that subscribe button to join Holmes and me for our next case. The game's always afoot, and we'd love to have you along. Until then, keep your eyes sharp and your wits sharper, just like Sherlock Holmes.